Hello, welcome to Cineverm. We're back again. We had some technical difficulties and we watched this film, First Man, last week, and I kind of fucked up the recording, so it doesn't exist anymore. So this is a re-review. So we're working on week-old memories here, so bear with us. But yeah, thanks for checking in. And we should have a new movie review posted very soon. But anyways, so we watched First Man, directed by Damien Chazelle. And yeah, this is the spoiler discussion, so
Get ready, guys.
yeah, if you haven't seen the movie, check out our review first.
You want to start us off?
Well, firstly, I would like to say that our previous discussion was bomb as hell, so, it kind of sucks that we don't have it anymore, because we went into it hard in the paint, and,
What does that mean?
hard in the paint?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what kids say.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, ask Jack.
Interesting.
Jack, leave it in the comments, hard in the paint, you know what it means.
Gassed up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I really love this movie. The first time I watched it, I saw it in IMAX, which was quite the experience, and I feel sorry for everyone who didn't get the opportunity to watch it in IMAX or theatrically at all, because it is such a great film to be experienced on a larger format with a very high quality sound system.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you have really big TV, nice quality TV, and an impressive sound system, I feel like you probably wouldn't get as much out of this movie than what is there.
Yeah.
Because it's the attention to detail to the imagery and the size of it at times, and the attention to detail of the sound and the scope of it is very awesome. And it does have a really big impact having seen it in the theater, because we rewatched it on my 24-inch TV with a Bluetooth speaker.
Yep.
You know, that 2-to-1 audio. But
that left to right, front and back audio.
Yeah, we got that mono. Or no, it's stereo. I don't fucking know. But yeah, so it was that I just wanted to say that. The director, he directed La La Land and Whiplash and another film before this. So I remember the first time I watched it and this previous time, I really tried to pick up on how he's grown as a director and a filmmaker. And it's really interesting having seen two of his previous movies and then coming onto this one and seeing how original he approached the material.
Yeah.
And how he truly decided to step out of his zone. Because very little of this movie even me knowing him as a filmmaker, there's very little that carries over visually from his previous film. For example, the way he composes images and the editing and the music and stuff. It's so different from the last two films, and it's very inspiring seeing someone really try to step out their zone and do something completely different and push themselves.
Yeah.
And I can really feel that he tried to do that with this film. Most of it really works for me, and then some of it doesn't work for me, but...
What parts don't work for you?
Well, since we're talking about the imagery... So the stuff I didn't like from the film was this movie can be split in half. There's the moments of Neil Armstrong working on getting to the moon, working at NASA, in a rocket, being shot into space. There's that half of the movie, and then there's this other half, which is him and his family life with his wife and his children. And I feel that most of the family stuff, it's very obvious, and he talks about the decision that he made to shoot all the home and family stuff as if it was being shot on a home video recorder.
Oh yeah.
Because they actually went through a lot of home videos that Neil Armstrong actually had with his family. I assume from that research he became
like that style?
Yeah, he probably felt some sort of personal attachment to it, and it felt very unique for a film. And it is, well, I guess it is kind of unique, but for me, that whole aspect didn't work just because it felt too home video. I get the idea and the concept and why it might work for some people, but for me, it was just a constant distraction.
You think it's because you were watching the home videos as first person.
Yeah.
And it makes in the first, and it makes you kind of think who's recording them in that home video way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that, and it's just distracting knowing that it's imitating a style instead of you being in that world. And because for most films, even if they have a very unique style or they employ a method, they stick to the same method throughout the film, and you forget about what's happening, and you're just there in the film, right?
Yes.
But this film, as I'm saying, it has two very distinct visual languages. There's the stuff on the rocket, which is very claustrophobic and in your face and point of view, and it's amazing. And then he goes home, or the film, many moments the film goes from space stuff to intercutting in the edit with the home stuff.
Okay.
There's a lot of moments where, like I just said, he's in space, and then we're seeing flashbacks of his family life. But it doesn't work because those two visual styles aren't equal. And then the space stuff is very in his perspective, which makes a lot of sense, and it makes you feel present. But then when it cuts back to the home video stuff, for me, I'm just confused because I have this personal connection with him now because we're in space with him, and it's terrifying. And I feel, oh, I'm in his head. I see what he sees and what he's feeling. And then we cut back to home life, and it erases all of that, because now I'm seeing not what he sees or what he saw or what he felt, but I'm seeing person's perspective of his memory, which is coming from that home video recorder. And it just doesn't make sense to me, because when you remember a memory, you're not remembering a home video recorder. You would feel that or see that if you watch the home videos constantly, or if that becomes your point.
Yes.
Or if he was recording it and he was the person holding the camera, then I feel as if it would really work. But so just the attachment point of view wise really separated me from the family aspect. And it was just so annoying being super entrenched in the film and then snapping out and knowing, oh yeah, this is the home video part.
Okay.
In the original review, I compared it to, imagine if right now, let's say SpaceX is doing the Mars mission, and there's an astronaut who's going to be the first man to step on Mars.
Yes.
And he's going to Mars, and on all the flashbacks or all the memories of his family, you're being shown it through an iPhone. And that's what this film feels like. But it's not him recording through his iPhone. It's some third person that, logically speaking, in the world wasn't really there. There was no one with a home video camera. They're just imitating that style. So it just feels fake, and just that comparison of imagine the iPhone thing really makes what I'm feeling, I think, would connect with a lot of people. Hopefully. I don't know. But that was the biggest negative for me. I don't know. I think it's like one of those choices that I think he made because he was so headstrong about wanting to make a different style film, that maybe he saw that and thought, oh, well, that's great. I'll just attach that and it'll reinforce how different this film is. Instead of, I think, him just focusing on Neil Armstrong's perspective, which is very strong and potent throughout the rest of the film. It's just on the memories being flashback. There's even moments where he's at home where the film is shot more traditionally. Not traditionally like a normal film, but traditionally in the language that they've already set up.
Yeah.
The claustrophobic intimacy that's very silent.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about in the first review all the big moments in the film. All those big moments were shot how the space stuff is shot. But
very
it's
big.
Yeah.
Very claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Like you're saying.
Yeah. You're separating him from the rest of the world. Where all the memories, which are supposed to be the most important things to him, are shot like a home video. And that's just very sad to me. Well, it's very distracting to me.
So going off of the shots that you're mentioning, how do you think he managed to create the whole claustrophobic feel? Because for me, seeing it, it was just I'm feeling really tight. Everything is so tight. But I don't know how you saw them, like how you saw that scene and you thought, oh, this works because this and this. I was just curious to know if it's like the color, how dark sometimes things were, or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, him and his cinematographer is Linus Sandgreen. I think him and Damien Chazelle did a brilliant job of making compositions and just setting up the language of when you're in the space.
Yeah.
Or when you're with him doing any trainings or mission work. And one thing I realized the second time I watched it was how they always introduce you into the vessel. So there's always him going up to the vessel. You see the vessel independently of anyone. Doors open, and then you see him. You see him enter, and then the camera enters. There's always a moment of the camera entering with after he's already in. So the first time they go in, he goes in, and then the camera squeezes in there. And it's like a little one shot or like a little just entering scene. And it doesn't linger for very long, and then it cuts to what he sees. You cut back to him seeing. So, you know, it's just establishing the pace, well, the order of how it feels. So he enters, you enter.
Yeah.
He sees, you see. And I think setting that pattern and cadence really helps you understand that, oh, I'm in his perspective without you realizing you're in his perspective.
Yes.
But then the other part is, I don't know how the fuck they shot it because those vessels are so small.
Yeah.
And cameras are so big. And I know what they used for this was film. Film is not only, like a film camera is not only already big, but now you have to have 2 fucking reels of film on there, you know, so.
I've heard they are loud too.
Yeah, and they're loud. So I don't know how the fuck he managed to fit a camera in there, or if he had like moving walls or something so he could slide the camera in. But most of the scenes inside the cockpit, none of them are wide lenses. They're all very, not zoom lenses, but I'm assuming they're all like 50 millimeter and up. So 50 millimeter is like what your natural eye sees. So I imagine they use from that lens and up. So you see everything you see is kind of squished together instead of what a wide lens does, which is kind of bend it out.
Wouldn't it curve too?
Yeah. Well, on a wide lens, yeah. And so I think they did that. So that's one aspect that would really help make it feel claustrophobic, is using a tighter lens. So, and then the way they edited it was very smart too, because it wasn't just rapid fire. You see shit going crazy. You lingered with stuff for a long time. So you saw his eye scanning the buttons, and then you saw the buttons for 3 to 4 seconds. You saw things rattling for a couple seconds. And then you see him rattling. You know, it wasn't, I feel like any other amateur director or cinematographer would have just been like cutting rapidly and trying to show as much shit to make you feel confused instead of making you feel anxiety. Like confusion is never good, but knowing that shit's going crazy is anxiety, which is good. And I think they really did a good job of doing that. They also, I mean, this is just how the rockets were designed, but having those windows where you can actually see out a little bit, I think that really helped as well cement the fact that you're entrapped and the world outside is big, but you can't even see it. And then, I don't know, there's just all that stuff and even more stuff that I can't really remember, I can't describe. I think they did a really good job of handling all those sequences. Like the first rocket lift and you're just in the spaceship, just visually, it was fucking amazing. I remember when I saw it in IMAX, I was pressed against my seat and I thought the whole theater was shaking. Like I was there in that vessel with him. And I'm afraid of heights, so I was like about to shit myself. Yeah. And then there's no, you go.
I was gonna say, I never knew space was so dark, but light at the same time.
Yeah. Goes from extreme darkness to extreme
brightness because of the sun.
Yeah. What did you think about all the visuals?
I don't know about, what does visuals mean? Like how it looks?
Yeah, everything.
Well, my favorite visual was when they were looking for that thing that they were supposed to attach to.
Oh yeah.
And then for some reason they got the coordinates wrong, and I like how I like the visual of them going up, seeing through that tiny window. It's just black.
Yeah.
And they're over here trying to talk to everyone back in the home base, and they're still trying to work out the math, and they have in their tight, cramped vessel, they have notebooks and they're trying to scribble everything, do all the math really quick. And then I like the visual of them being super lit, and then he's like, fine, this is this is what I'm gonna do. And then he does whatever, and then he's in his mind 100% sure that they would be able to see the thing right. And then I like how he turned off all the lights, and finally you could see a very small little object, and it was getting closer, and it wasn't moving, right?
No, not really.
Yeah, you could just see it getting closer and closer, and then they were so happy. And mostly the visual of it, it kind of showed their eyes, and it showed their individual reactions to them seeing finally their objective, which was that thing, and then the whole... I like that light difference and stuff, and I like the little windows the most.
Oh, yeah. That scene was that's probably one of my favorite scenes of the whole film. Just with the space stuff, that was one of the most beautifully executed ones, because I love there's also a very cool moment within that scene that really describes Neil Armstrong as a person, where the space station is telling them, whatever, do this, do that, or what do you think, and then I'm busy right now, and he's like scribbling because he's trying to figure it out. And then the other guy is like saying something, I forgot what he said, but he's asking him some questions like, should I move to the right or whatever? And then Neil Armstrong snaps at him, and it's like, I need to concentrate, don't talk to me. And then he's just writing his stuff.
Whoa.
And
we could both die right now.
Yeah. And he's just doing like math. And then he realizes like, we should be able to see it. Like, everything is checking out. So that just cements that when he has a task, he doesn't care how disrespectful or what emotions are attached when people expect things out of him. He's just focused on completing the task.
Oh, yes.
Which I think is the reason why he was one of the first men to go on the moon. I mean, obviously because all the sacrifices other people made for him and his team, but he was the fact that he was the leader of that mission is very clear on just how he executes and maneuvers around.
He's so focused. He went through so many G-forces while he was spinning that he was like, no, I have to press this button. I have to press it. And he didn't pass out.
Yes.
He has such a strong mental power.
Strength. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing that I really love about that scene before that G-force stuff started happening was how you were saying the lighting. When he turns off all the lights, I love how the cinematographer, I don't know how the hell they did it, because it's just complete darkness in the vessel, but all you see is like half of their eyes and below, and a little bit of their cheek is like barely lit. I mean, the whole screen is black, and you just see eyes and like a little cheekbone. That is such a beautiful shot. Using darkness so well and having the confidence, both of them having the confidence to say, this is going to work. This bare glint of light is going to translate well on screen. And then I love them seeing the little shuttle, like you said, just hovering. But that scene is one of my favorite scenes, because then it continues, and when they attach, awesome, and then something happens, they all celebrate, and then when it starts spinning out of control, that is one of the most beautiful scenes ever. And I love how it just starts going so crazy so fast. You don't even have time to really know what's happening. You're just making choices at that point.
Yeah.
It'd be as if you were driving and then your car just starts spinning out, and most people are just like, oh my God, what do I do? And they panic or whatever.
But for him, he took a second to think about what exactly was going on, all the possibilities that he could fix it, and then he just went to one route.
Yeah. The amount of training that you must have to just constantly try things and not give up while death is so in your face, and while everything is trying to disorient. Everything's beeping. People are you okay? Are you okay? One guy to your right is asking you, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do?
Yeah.
And then everything you're doing is not working.
Yeah.
Constantly. If anything, everything they did made it worse and worse. We need to detach. Like, he made that choice, and they go back and realize that it wasn't that thing that was spinning, it was them. So technically, I don't know, I'm not an astronaut, but probably some NASA enthusiast could tell me if I'm wrong, but it seemed as if a lot of the research and investigation after it was that there could have been a way where he could have saved both themselves and the other vessel, but in that moment of stress, you make a decision and you stick with it until you fix the problem. And I think that's so brilliant, because he is not a genius. In no way is he smarter than anyone else. He's just more focused. And that's the only thing that is that's the only thing that separates him from every other person in the NASA team, was his amount of focus and emotional strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so awesome, and that scene perfectly, defines that. And it's just so fucking cool when everything was spinning and then the other guy passes out and you just feel so much stress.
For him, his hands were shaking while doing everything.
Yeah.
His face was turning one way and he's trying to go the other way.
Yes. And I love how they do that cool cutaway shot to him slamming his hand on the window. Like, he's so disoriented. He needs to hold something. And it's just so fucking awesome. What do you think about the home video stuff, though? The thing I disliked. Did you feel any distraction of it? Did you feel any emotion come out of it? Do you feel like it was a good...
Oh, one question.
Oh.
I'm not really good. I didn't get distracted by it. Did I feel any emotion from it? No, because for me, where I found most of the emotion was the dialogue, even though there was very few words said between the family and him, or him and his friends. I got most of the emotion from that. Yeah, that was it.
Okay.
What was your third question?
Oh, I don't remember. I just that shit so much so rapidly. So have you ever... Because it's interesting to me, the home video aspect. I think for me, not only do I not enjoy it on a technical level, but on a personal level, I don't have any connection to the home video stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have home videos of me being young or my family. I don't even have any video content my youth or any sort of emotional connection.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I'm just curious hearing someone else's perspective that maybe they did grow up like that. Because I know a lot of American families, especially in that time period where these Super 8 cameras, which were, it seemed like the ones they were using, was such a big impact on the American life, where you could now record events that you and your family did, or moments. And I guess my question outside of the movie is, did you ever have that in your childhood or youth? Like,
did I have it? I remember us outside playing whatever game, finding Bigfoot. My little brother was Bigfoot. He was always angry. So we decided, you know what? Let's bring this to the next level and record it. So we would play our game while recording it, and it would just seem so fun seeing it later on that day. But aside from that recording and then another recording, we were just eating and stuff. Those are the only 2 times that I ever remember seeing someone record us, or seeing a replay of a recording of us.
And y'all don't have that anymore? Is it lost?
I don't know. All I remember is my brother was really mad. He was like, I don't want to be Bigfoot anymore. And then he would run into the bush and then be like, but look, you're in your natural habitat, bro. Bigfoot's always in bushes. And then he would get really smiley and say, you know what? I'm a natural. So he would go on with it and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Usually people are more willing to do what you want them to do if you're recording them, because they don't want to have themselves being all mean or rude in a recording.
Oh, yeah.
So at least I noticed that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so we already talked about the visuals a great deal. So another aspect that you brought up earlier was how powerful the dialogue was. And I think some of the best moments of dialogue in the film were with not only Neil Armstrong, but with the mother and the wife of Neil Armstrong. Well, the wife of Neil Armstrong. And I think her as a character was such a powerful force in the film. And it's so amazing seeing a woman in a film portrayed like this, in this very specific way, where it's very independent, and very strong emotionally and mentally.
Yes.
And what do you think about that?
100% agree with that. The piece of dialogue that stuck to me the most was when I think Neil was doing some work or whatever, but him bringing his work home made her stressed, because it felt like she was always at some point disconnected with him. because he was always so focused on his work. And moving on to the next thing. So there was a shot where he was sitting on a table or pacing, I cannot remember, but she left him and the camera tracked her down a hallway into a room that was very bright.
Yeah.
And her son came from his room into her room and was like, "Hey, Mom, can I go outside?" And she just looks at him and she says, "Yes, you can." And then he walks away. That's all I can remember. I wish that's probably not how exactly it happened, but to me that was the most powerful piece of dialogue, because she is constantly battling through the thought of, my husband is doing something that's affecting me, but I don't want to stop him from discovering who he wants to be at the end of his life and think I did this,
and regretting her,
and regret or resenting her for making herself his center of focus instead of what he's working on. So to me that was a very clear way of her saying that she's comfortable and strong enough to let her husband go do whatever, and her children also do whatever, and not try to ask for more attention for herself. She is going through stuff, but she's not trying to weigh everyone else down with her needs of, I need immediate attention. She's a super selfless person. She's very internal. She's very simple, and I think the amount of character that she shows just with that one phrase of, yes, you can go outside, shows so much character, so much empathy, so much respect for them, who they are as people. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, I just want to correct some things about that scene, which was, he's in the kitchen and she approaches him and says, and they're talking, and he says, I got the mission to the moon. And that was her first realization, like, oh, he's going to the moon. And that, so just to add on to what you're saying, that was the thing that happened previous to that. The fact that everything, all the dangers, all the people who've died, the last who knows how many years of their life has led up to this one single moment that now it's happening.
Yes.
He's going to the moon. Something that no one has ever done. The chances of him dying are so stupidly high. It's almost guaranteed.
Yes.
All the way to the point where the president wrote each of the wives and called them personally to tell them, thank you for your sacrifice.
In advance?
Well, the day he left, they sent that letter or whatever.
Oh.
Yeah. Don't you remember that one guy was reading it out?
They also had plans for when they died and how they were going to do everything.
Yeah.
The funerals and,
Well, so that happened. She goes to her room, and you can just see on her face, the camera movement, the way it's shot, the composition of it all reflects that she wants to express what she's feeling. Like, I don't want you to go because I don't want you to die. And I don't really understand what you're doing. I don't understand why you have to do this. Like, what do you have to prove? But at the same time, it feels like she's emoting that within because just of a love of, I don't want you to do something so dangerous. But she loves him so much on the other side that she doesn't want to tell him that because she knows how much it means to him as well. And then on the other part, she loves herself so much to where she's not going to stoop down that low to put herself over him. And so there's so many dynamics working just as a person. And then the kid comes up and we see the frame within a frame. We see the door and she's within the room, but she's like outlined by this door. So she seems very small and she seems cramped and closed in, like she's in a box. She has nowhere to go. There's no way she can escape what she's feeling. She's just boiling in that moment of realization. And then her son walks in, and then her son's saying, "Is Daddy going to moon?" Just reinforcing it. And then yes. And maybe there's some hope of like, maybe I can release some of this with my son and we can talk about this. But then as soon as she answers yes, can I go play outside? And I just imagine it'd be like I'm getting sent to, let's say there's a new war, like World War III or some shit. I'm getting sent to North Korea. And then I tell you, and then it's boiling in you like, oh shit, front lines. And let's just say the possibility of death is 90%, like very high. And then you're hanging out with your bros, and it's just in you. None of them know about it. Then they ask you, "Oh, is Anthony going to war?" Yeah. It's like, "Oh, well, can we do a Booler Cooler episode?" You know, just imagine how how one stress to you is so big, and then someone approaches you who is your child, and it's over. Oh, he's going to moon. Cool. I don't really care because I want to go play. And that is just fascinating. Everything you said is exactly how I felt. And just how it was shot and composed was very brilliant as well. And it's just as a mother.
Yes, that's what I was gonna add, that I've seen a lot of mothers in film, and a lot of them are very reactive.
Yes.
So if something is pressing, they're pressing back. Not necessarily, and not even to what is actually the problem, but to quote unquote other victims of that same problem. Yes. So imagine Roma, right? The mom wasn't pressing back at the husband who left her and is cheating on her. She pressed back at her wallet, all the money she saved, the house, and her kids, you know?
Yeah. And
she just created a whole cloud of distractions, so she didn't have to directly address the problem. Yeah. And she did the opposite.
Yeah. And
she didn't avoid anything.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's so spectacular seeing this, and I feel like a lot of people would just glance over this character because she's so quiet and stable throughout. Yeah. And it's so amazing to me because I'm trying to think of another film where a woman, but specifically a mother, is portrayed in this light, and she's so selfless. Without it, most films I feel about a character similar to her would constantly be telling you, oh, look how selfless she is, you know?
Also, she didn't hold any of her own decisions against her family.
Yeah, like she let her kid play while she's dealing with the nearly guaranteed death of that boy's father and her husband. And I remember in our original review, we talked about your mom could break a fucking dish. You walk up to your mom and she's like, fuck, I broke a dish. And you're like, hey, can I go play with my friends? You and that dish have no connection. And then your mom turns around, snaps at you, and it's like, go do your fucking homework. What the fuck you doing asking me about shit? I just broke a fucking dish, you know? And then it's just game over. Your life's done.
Your value is at the same level of value as that dish.
Yeah. I think every single person listening to this who has had a mother growing up, I'd be fucking shocked if anyone had ever had anything even 1% of the level of this. Something's happening to your mom. You want to do something else. And because it's just selfish. So many mothers that I encounter and I've seen or I've heard are selfish. I mean, I'm sure there is a lot of selfless mothers out in the world.
Oh, yeah.
But just in the film world, this is the first time I've seen it. And it's 5 seconds.
Yes.
And then it's over.
Yes.
And that's just so fucking amazing. Some of the most kindest, nicest people who are the strongest, you never really see because it happens in a second. And
normally, the only reason why you detect the opposite is because they're so loud and destructive.
It makes me I would really love to watch a whole movie of her story, or another story similar to how she is. Someone who is constantly not being reactive and struggling through it. I think that would just make such a fascinating film or novel or anything. Shit, maybe I'll write it down and I'll write one myself.
The way that they were showing her and how she was going through her things, it was through very small snapshots of how she responded to her kids and Neil Armstrong. But I don't remember ever seeing a scene where it's just her. So it kind of gave me the vibe of First Reform,
Mm.
where it showed his responses, him and someone else.
Yeah.
And there are very few him by himself for a long time without him doing something.
Yeah.
That seemed kind of low, like we talked about. It was as if he was very depressed, but the true deep destructive parts of the depression you didn't see because the movie just glanced over it. So it gave me that type of vibe with the mom, because you saw her reactions and the way she communicated, but you never saw the back end, which was probably all the cigarettes she smoked, all the times she was laying in bed by herself.
Yeah.
All the times when her kids kept asking, what is dad gonna do? What is this? What is that? And
or why did Bobby's dad die?
Yeah, or her interactions with the other moms, with the other wives who had just lost their husbands.
Yeah. And I feel like this movie, why it chose to do that was because, well, one, it's about Neil Armstrong. He is the main character.
Yes, definitely.
But also, two, just on that same coin, just how we said, a truly selfless person, you can't even see. They're almost invisible in real world. And I feel like this film kind of represents what her essence in the film is almost like that. She's forgotten in a big way. And all this big glam and glamour of going to the moon, the strongest person was her, keeping all that stuff tethered and tied together. And she's almost on the sideline. And I feel that's why I think First Reform did that, which was not show you a lot of stuff. Because it doesn't matter. The film is wanting you not to care and wanting you to feel like everything is worthless. Where this film is opposite, is just you want to make, some people might, like us, want to know more about her and feel more about her and see her struggles, but
it's not about her.
Yeah.
It's about,
and it represents her because she wouldn't want that. And that's just so, it's form follows function, or function follows form. She functions as an invisible entity that helps when you need help, but she will not shove herself in your face for any reason other than, or for any reason at all.
Even death isn't enough, or possible death.
Yeah. Since we're talking about the mom, the biggest moment for me, that moment was really big in retrospective. I remember watching it, even the second time it didn't really click with me, but when we did the first review, I was like, holy shit, that's how strong she was. We already talked about that. But the other scene, the first and second time that really hit me with her character, was when Neil is packing his shit and he's about to leave. And she's in his face, wanting him to talk to the kids.
Yeah.
And in most films, it's, what about me? You're just going to leave me and all this shit.
Yep.
And she does that. What any other film has shown that scene to be, the man's leaving to do whatever, he's probably going to die. And then the woman is very me or whatever. And this film takes that idea and just fucking rips that shit in half. And her reasoning is, I'm not gonna tell the kids that you left and you didn't want to talk to them.
Yeah.
And you're making this choice. You need to be a man enough to fucking talk to them. Like, it's not on me.
And he's also bringing a lot of excuses.
Yes.
Like, oh, I'm packing my bags. They're probably asleep. And she's so adamant about it. She's like, no, you're just wasting time with your luggage. You're just wasting time arguing with me about not arguing and arguing at the same time.
Yeah.
And making the excuse that the kids are asleep. They're not asleep. Yeah. You're very important to them, so they haven't slept.
Yeah. And I don't know, that scene was just, the performance.
Oh, also, as soon as imagine you're the kid, right? Your mom tells you, hey, your dad's going to the moon. You're not dumb. So from that second that your mom solidified it, and because she's very truthful, she tells you your dad's going to the moon. Imagine how many days after that you had to anticipate that time when your dad finally left.
Yeah.
How you've been wanting that conversation with your dad that whole time, and then your mom, you hear them. It's your mom and your dad. They're basically screaming at the top of their lungs. And you hear your dad saying, I don't want to talk to them, basically. And your mom's like, talk to them. And then you finally get set down at the table or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, whatever. Just go.
No, yeah, what you're saying is awesome, and I'll follow that up with they're hearing him make all these excuses, and they're seeing how weak of a father he is.
Well, emotionally weak.
Well, emotionally and communication wise.
Yeah.
And that can be, to some people, that can be shown as a lack of care.
Mm-hmm.
For him, he does love his children or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
as any, people can gather things and get their own ideas of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if something happened and you're very quiet, I can see you as just ignoring me, and it'd be negative.
Mm-hmm.
And until you finally go back around to describe exactly what it was, then we're on the same page. But as people, we gather information and we're making our own connections through assumptions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those kids were probably hearing the dad not wanting to do it, and I can't imagine that the thought of, does he even care about us anymore?
Well, that's I was gonna add to that. There's a thing in the 7 Habits. It's called an emotional bank account, and you can withdraw. You make withdrawals when you try to correct something or you try to tell someone what to do, right? But you add to the bank account by creating personalized experiences with that person.
Yeah.
He had none.
Yeah.
So adding to how you were saying people make assumptions, that's probably why they all automatically assume that my dad doesn't care for us during that last minute of conflict, because he never explained to them anything beforehand emotionally.
Yeah.
Through little experiences. Even when the oldest boy did try to play a little board game with him, or I think it was like a puzzle or something, Neil was still so focused into his own things that a phone call drew him away from his child. Immediately. And his child was still trying to express himself to his dad, even though it was his own level of importance, which was his board game. At that moment, his board game was probably as important as a phone call was to his dad. And then his dad just ignored him.
Yeah.
So
I really love how the mother attacks him basically during that scene, and just that whole exchange, and how she's not being violent, but she is so forceful. There is no other option than him sitting them down. And I love that amount of strength, and the way that it was performed by both the actress Claire Foy and Ryan Gosling was amazing. I love that whole interaction. And then when they finally sit the kids down, I love how she's just not adding anything. She's just letting him do his thing. And I can see someone who is a victimized person. I mean, we've seen it, we've experienced it all. When someone is like, yeah, fucking say shit, and you're wanting someone to talk, and then you're trying to rile them up more or some shit,
And you're manipulating what they're saying too.
Yeah. I could have seen that scene in a weaker woman saying, and what about Tommy? What are you gonna tell me? We've seen all those movies that are like that, and just seeing the complete opposite of her just leaning back, she disappears. It's almost as she's not there. Until the end, she's like, all right, that's it.
Well, what made her strong for me was the fact that even when he was done, she just told them to go to bed. She didn't input any of her own internal ideas into it to manipulate it to where the kids feel some type of way. The kids got the information, and she gave them a chance to interpret it however way they wanted. I've had a lot of conversations with at least my mom where, because she's going through something, the person talking is talking just for the hell of it. She's not listening at all. She doesn't care what they say because she wants her point to come across. So at the end of when that person's talking, she's gonna bring out her own things and say, well, you're being selfish.
Yeah.
Well, you're being rude. You don't care about us. You don't blah, 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 And she didn't do that.
Yeah.
She just told her kids, like, hey, go to bed. And that was it between her and Neil, too. That was it.
Yeah.
She didn't have any back motives of self-satisfaction.
Exactly. Yeah. And since we're already talking about the scene, just getting away from her part of the film, the moment of, The fact that Neil Armstrong is talking to his kids I love the whole shot design. Them sitting at the table, you know, the medium shots back and forth, the editing, the pacing of it all, the way it was written, how it was lit, everything was glorious in that moment. The kids' performances were very, very good as well, and Ryan Gosling was on point. But anyways, the whole interaction. So they're all sitting down, and Ryan Gosling asking them, you know, explaining things in a very logical, dry, and it makes it brilliant because previous to this, we've seen 2 press conferences, and he is talking not only in the same exact manner. It almost feels like he's repeating shit that he's already said in these 2 press conferences. That's how droned out he is. And we all know from both press conferences how much he hates speaking to people about what he's doing. He doesn't give
or emotional things.
Yeah, like he does not give a fuck. And he is expressing himself in the same exact way to these children. You know, for him, he can't, you know, make that emotional connection or whatever, but that's his instant go-to answers or that, and then having
press
him
conference answers.
Yeah, and then him saying, will there be any more questions? It's 2 kids. How do you like ask something as if there's a whole audience of people? Does anyone else have any more questions? I was just like, fuck, man,
It's basically saying, I don't want to be here anymore. Do you have any more questions that I like?
Yeah, well, not even that I like, just that I need to finish so I can leave.
That's, like quick questions that I can just give you a generic answer and that's it. Move on.
And, I don't know, just that whole... I don't remember all the dialogue, or I would, you know, go into more detail, but all of it was amazing. But the moment of it where it reached the climax of who Neil Armstrong was to this family and to these kids happened in that scene where the kid to his...
And how small their emotional bank account was with each other.
Yeah. So the youngest kid to his right, I feel like I remember, comes up and hugs him. And he seems, I don't know, like 10, 11 or something. He's still really young.
He seems a lot more little than that.
Oh, well, he was really young. Hugs him. You can tell that kid is, maybe he doesn't really understand death as much as the other kid, but he does understand that his dad might be leaving for good. Yeah. And you can see the sadness in him when he hugs his father. And then Neil barely puts his arm around him. Yeah. Done. And then the older kid, who is now old enough to understand who his father is. And he's experienced, you know, through the game that you explained. And all these moments we probably haven't seen of his life. They're staring at each other. And I love the scene that because it goes to 2 medium shots. You go to a medium shot of the kid staring at Neil. You see Neil's reaction of how his son is staring at him, as if both of them want to say something to each other, some sort of like, I love you, I'm sorry I wasn't there. Like, I don't know, me watching it the second time, I automatically imagined what they were thinking, which were those things. I wish I could speak with you, you know, I wish you weren't going, I hope you're safe, I hope you come back, and all these emotional things. And then we see Neil Armstrong's or Ryan Gosling's eyes twitch down, and then we cut to a wider shot where you see
the little kid's hand,
just a little kid's hand reaching out for a fucking handshake. All the thoughts that you could have imagined that they shared in that moment of them staring each other in the eyes, peering into each other's souls, was a fucking handshake. That's how distant they are. That not only they can't speak to each other, but they have to shake each other's hand. That is one of the most unpersonal things, unemotional things. Like, when have you ever shook someone's hand and actually like, oh, this is real right here?
Well, that's the thing. Remember the first review we were talking about how there's that zombie movie? Anyways, there's something that some people do when they're always in a state of possible death. So you can have a big group and there's people dying left and right. So as soon as you make a new friend, it's as if they're technically already dead because you already expect them to die soon because it's the norm. Yeah. So you could be friends or whatever, this and that, but there's some people who at the time of their friend's death, they won't cry. Because they've already mourned their death beforehand. So I'm imagining the son. He has no influence from his mom to create extra stress, to create extra love for his dad. He's just ingesting everything. And at that last moment, he has a father, but he's already accepted that his father has died.
Yeah.
Because of the impossible mission. So him going through all the stages of mourning and then finally getting to this last moment, I think for him, anything past a handshake would make him too real, as if he's come back to him. So it would be too hard for him as a kid who's already gone through the whole process to have his dad just suddenly come back and he's alive again.
Yeah.
So all he can technically do is shake hands.
Yeah.
Or I imagine he would probably like die. Not die, but like start crying a lot and being hysterical because it's probably the last time he's ever gonna see his dad.
Yeah, and it's very impressive how one 3-minute scene can do that.
Oh yes.
And since we're already now talking about Neil, we can continue to talk about him. And so previous to that, we see how he handles friendships. And there's the other very powerful scene, well, for me, that really had an impact on me was when his best friend died. Basically, he starts this NASA mission, and there's one guy, for some reason, they have a connection with, and they actually hang out. And there's a couple scenes where they're talking, having a good time, they're making jokes with each other. You can tell, like, they're actually friends.
They're in a family dinner setting.
Yeah, where he willingly went. Every other time we see anyone invite him out, he says, no, I'm busy, or no, I'm busy, and then they're about to leave, and he's like, all right, I'll go have a drink. It's never, I want to.
Yeah.
And this guy, we never even see that guy ask him to come over. They're just there.
Yeah.
So that just sets up how intimate of a relationship they had as friends. And then he dies, and they're at their funeral, and he can't cope with it, and just how his personality is. He doesn't want to express his weakness just by crying or talking, how everyone else expects you to deal with whatever loss you have. His go-to thing is working or going to the next project or focusing on a new task or something that will distract him from it. So he leaves, and he's just staring at the moon with a little telescope in his backyard by himself. And that was a beautiful lit scene. The composition of it was amazing.
Which is kind of a metaphor of how he's focusing, because telescopes help you focus on one object.
Yeah. And then the way it's shot is, he's almost like, I think he was like on the right side of the frame, and everything to the left was just an empty lawn.
And it was dark.
Yeah, and it's like, that's what he has. It's just him, nothing, and then an object that's millions of miles away. But and then the guy approaches him because the wife was telling him, hey, I think you should talk to him, because everyone is forcing this idea that, oh, he's not dealing with shit. He needs to cry, he needs to talk. But I'm sure there's tons of people who react in the way that he does based on trauma. And the friend comes out and he's like, hey, man, or I forgot what they say exactly, but he's trying to interact with him and get him to open up. And I love the performance by both of those actors is amazing, because the other guy seems like a hard ass, but he's so willing to open himself up to Neil because they're on the same mission. And I know this guy sees him as family already, even though they don't have any connections or interactions. He automatically he respects him as if he was a brother. And Neil is the complete opposite of that. He distanced everyone, especially his family. But when they're talking, and then Neil just turns and looks at him and almost mumbling tells them, do you think I left the party to be talked to?
Yep.
And then the other guy's, says something again.
He's shocked.
Yeah, and he's just like, that is just the most impersonal way of saying what he's trying to say. He even distances it more. Instead of saying, hey, I want to be alone. He's attacking him. Like, are you so fucking stupid to think I left the party alone in my private backyard? No lights are on. I'm staring at the fucking moon with the telescope, and you have the audacity to come out here and fucking ask me to talk?
Yep.
If I wanted to talk to you, I would have, it's just like, damn, that's so it's like stabbing someone in the fucking heart.
Oh, yeah.
And then he tries again, and then he just repeats himself. Do you think I'm out here because I wanted to speak with someone? Oh my God. That is one of the most brilliant go fuck yourself scenes I've seen without saying go fuck yourself.
No cuss words.
Oh, that's fucking awesome. So that moment, there's so many other moments like that.
Wait. Can we talk about how his daughter died in the beginning? Let's talk about her dying because it's the beginning of the whole cycle of why he wants to go to the moon in the first place.
Yeah.
You remember how in the first recording we were talking about how this whole mission was to get a final closure for his daughter dying?
Yeah, like a cathartic release.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's, well, how the movie plants it. So his daughter dies, and we don't even see him with his daughter that much, but we do see moments of them spending time together.
And being super happy.
Yeah. There's one shot that I really love where it's just Neil Armstrong's finger and then her hair. And it's just like super bright sunlight and he's just like twisting it and stuff. I think that's an amazing shot. It showed that shot, well, when she died, and then it showed that shot again when he passed out, and then again, I think when he was on the moon dropping her necklace, that's all he saw was that moment, and that moment just feels so intimate because that's probably when he already had it confirmed that there was no hope. And I don't know what anyone else feels, but that you're just touching something that is going to leave, and you know it's going to leave, and you're just like basking in the moment, which the light, the hyper focus of just feeling hair wrap around your finger. I just imagine the thoughts you could have of that moment and why that one image was so imprinted in him.
Yeah.
It's very interesting because Ryan Gosling does this thing where he's always rubbing his fingers, and now I'm making a connection that maybe isn't there, but fuck it, I'm a viewer, so I can make whatever connections I want. But it's interesting that one of the most happiest moments, or one of the most important moments of his life, is just feeling hair. And then every other scene when he's very stressed out, he wants to almost like rub the skin off his hands. And he's just doing this, and it feels like it hurts. And I imagine if that's almost a subconscious, like, I don't want to feel like, I don't want to feel anything with my hands because maybe I just want to remember that piece, the hair that was wrapping around, and how soft it was and how delicate it was. And I don't know.
Whoa.
I just made that connection, so it probably isn't there, but
super connections.
Yeah. But anyways, so onto the daughter. He has this fascination with space, but it doesn't even seem like he had ever really truly wanted to go to the moon previous.
It was just he really liked flying.
Yeah, and even how the film presents it, he just got grounded, so he can't fly anymore because of his loss. And then on his table, on his desk.
Oh no, it's because he made the other plane explode or something. Remember, he was going out of the atmosphere, and for some reason, he ended up almost not coming back, and then he came back, and he crashed.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, that was close."
And it's also because he's not focused enough. He's thinking about his daughter's death, so he's taking more risks than we're willing to allow him. And
Yeah, I forgot about that. But he sees the journal, or like the magazine, on his desk. Apollo 11 doesn't even say lunar travel, just says whatever. And that's all it takes for him to leap onto that. And then I assume he did research about it, and he's like, "Oh, they're going to the moon." Where any other person would be like, "That's fucking ridiculous."
Was that initial inception of, I can't do this anymore, so I'm gonna do this?
Yeah.
Because it's in front of me. Why not?
I imagine if any other job posting was in front of him at that moment, he would have done that. Like, it didn't matter what the task was. He just needed to do a task.
Yeah.
But lucky for him, this was such an impossible task that it would keep him occupied for years and years of his life. And then at the end of it, it would be so grand and epic that, at least in the film, it was that enormous release of emotion for himself.
And it's really beautifully set when he releases the bracelet that his daughter had, and he puts it in one of the moon craters.
Yeah. And I just imagine, at least for him, it feels, just me as a viewer, I'm feeling that he wants to be alone. So he can truly just be alone and go through whatever he's feeling.
Oh,
and relieve
yes.
himself.
Oh,
He
yes.
wants to just be separated.
Yeah.
And that moment, him being on the moon, is the most alone he has ever been in his entire life, probably in human history.
Mm-hmm.
They are there's one person with him and one or circling the moon, but
Mm-hmm.
the amount of people around him has gone down so drastic. The Earth is
And
so
the distance,
yeah,
too.
and it's dead silent,
Mm-hmm.
and you're just nowhere.
You're so light,
I,
too.
yeah, I imagine all those things probably was just an overwhelming sensation of now I can really cope with this and
Mm-hmm.
just let it go and move on.
Oh, it's so weird. He was waiting till the moment where he was so far away from humans that he could get a true moment of silence and take his giant leap, which was letting go of his daughter's death.
Yeah.
Oh, can we talk about the actual phrase that he says? One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, how does that make sense with what he's going through?
Oh yeah.
One small step for me as a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one giant step for mankind. But what is mankind leaping towards?
Yeah. And I think at least for him in that moment, he doesn't know. No one knows.
Yeah.
We don't even know what that moment has done.
Yes.
And it's so cool because it's the selfish one step for me, and this is helping me, and the one giant leap for everyone else. So I am still sacrificing myself, but I found a thing that is for me and for something I don't even know.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter that he doesn't even seem fascinated with the idea like, oh, what is this going to do for the future? Like, it doesn't matter. I just did it and it's done. And whoever wants to take what I did and move on with it, that's them, but I'm done, you know. And I don't know what he did after this, but I don't think well, I don't know, I don't want to assume shit, but it seemed like this was the moment and it was done and he moved on.
I'm just thinking about how he might have been thinking, this is a small step for me as a person grieving, but it's a large leap for every person who has ever grieved before. So thinking back to the very beginning of when the first human being was grieving and couldn't manage a task big enough to encompass death, and how big of a leap it is for one human to finally get to that end, which is the moon, you know? Something so outside of the norm that it's like a giant leap, for a giant resolution for not just myself, but for everyone who has ever grieved before.
Yeah.
And it's like that resolution for them too.
Yeah.
Which might not mean anything.
No, but it
that
does.
he meant, but that's kind of how I saw it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, subconsciously, how could you not feel so many things? And those being the words at that moment, there was some. I doubt he even wrote it down or thought about it. It's just that's what was said. And
was the actual recording of the real Neil Armstrong saying those words put into the film?
No, that was actually Ryan Gosling saying it.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry about the barking dogs. We're about to... Oh, well, we can talk about the moon landing since we're already kind of halfway there. I love how the moon landing was shot. So, previous to that, the film was shot on different formats. So, it was 16 millimeter or Super 16. I think it was both. And then 35 millimeter, which is your more average frame size. And then they shot on IMAX film, which was 70 or 65 millimeter, or a mix of both.
Oh, question. Does that mean you have to shoot the same scene 3 different times?
No, that's just the frame size. That's why some moments of the film got really big, and then some were really small.
Oh.
Yeah. So, for example, when they finally land on the moon, there's the door opens, and then you see the outside of the moon, right? And then they're both standing there, and then the camera skips them and goes, and you hear the sound leave everything, and then
like an air vacuum.
yeah, and when the camera goes through the doorway, you probably didn't notice, but the film was widescreen like this. There's two black bars. As soon as it passes the door, those two black bars just recede up, and you see a full frame, which is 70 millimeters. The size
Whoa.
of the screen it's the entire screen now.
Yeah.
And just seeing that moment for the second time, it was just so beautiful. Just mixed with the sound and the bars going up and just being completely immersed on the moon. And the amount of detail that you could see every like fucking grain on the lunar surface. It just looked like powder and like sand or finer than sand. And the camera just going around, panning, seeing something that looks so alien. And I think that
I have a question.
that
Do you
transition.
know how big that warehouse was?
I have no idea.
Or what would be your best guess for how big that warehouse would have had to be?
I don't know. Big as shit. I don't know if they used like a mixture of green screen and actual warehouse or what they did, but I just know they used one giant light source to imitate the sun, which casted a bright light evenly through everything to where there was only shadows on one side. And it just made it look strange. Because on Earth, you can never really have that because sun rays are hitting the atmosphere, dispersing. Light is bouncing off this piece of plastic, bouncing off my light onto you. There's so many refractions and reflections, where on the moon it was just one source, everything else. And that's just really fucking brilliant how they shot it. I don't know how they did it. We have the Blu-ray, so I'll probably watch the special features soon.
Well, I was gonna say also the moon didn't look flat. It actually looked curved.
Oh, yes. The amount of detail they put into the sets and costumes and locations and all the technical visual stuff that was in the movie was so on point. Because I know they researched the hell out of this movie. I mean, they had NASA stuff, like NASA recordings, objects. They filmed at NASA. They probably made exact replicas of every single thing that those people actually used, to the buttons, to the lights, to the sounds, to the ways things opened or closed, to how things moved. All of it seemed so immaculately replicated. It's just stunning. And even me not knowing anything about it, it felt so real. I can't imagine someone who's a space nut or a NASA head, or they just love the idea of...
An enthusiast?
Yeah, like, I can imagine they would watch this movie and the alpha collaborator consistor was exactly how it is in real life, and then the I don't know, what the fuck.
It's actual charts.
Yeah, like...
real charts on his notebook.
Yeah. And that's just so amazing. And
I bet someone was like, whoa, that is the exact way the food was packaged.
Oh, yeah.
And you know how it looked kind of brown and it didn't look appetizing?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that was exactly... And it tasted terrible.
Yeah. It's really amazing. The guy who was constantly trying to open up with him, they were doing another test launch. And they were in the shuttle. And then a wire was exposed, and since it was so filled with oxygen, the wire lit on fire, and within seconds they all died.
Yeah.
That scene was an amazing scene, just how short someone, or all three of their, or four, I don't know.
It was 3 of them.
Yeah. How short their life could be ended by one simple technical mistake.
Yeah.
And that's the rate of speed that these people were working at, was they were just moving on next. That something like that could have been looked over or not known about, and caused 3 people to die within seconds.
Yeah.
And
what sucks is that the people that are dying had been in their program for years.
Yeah.
So the amount of at least monetary investment that they've put into these people's education is probably like millions.
Oh, yes.
And for them to just die in 3 seconds, it just gives you, or at least for me, I got a lot of anxiety from how quick they killed characters off. Sometimes you didn't even see them die. You just heard or saw Neil learn about their deaths.
Yeah. Not only the money thing, but also there was a limited amount of people who could even qualify to do this job. And not only qualify, but people who were qualified and willing to die for something like this.
They probably had to have previous flying experience,
Yeah.
certain amount of hours doing emergency stuff, all this schooling
Math,
about
God.
physics
Yeah.
and just space and flying and all this stuff.
Yeah. Shit, what was I gonna say? But the scene that I was wanting to talk about is the scene where they're at the government ball and you can tell Neil Armstrong doesn't want to talk to any of them or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets the phone call that 3 other people died in that explosion or fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I love how he's just on the phone and like his character is so silent. Like, yeah, okay. You don't see really anything on his face. In his eyes, you can see what he's suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just hear the faint little like of the glass breaking, and I love how that.
And he cut himself.
Yeah, I love that idea, and I love how he just doesn't talk. You know, he was just sitting there watching TV. All the other NASA astronauts are like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" You know, not only did 3 people die, but now the news is talking about how we're stupid. You know, how could this happen? Such a stupid flaw. Because those 3 guys were the ones that were supposed to go to the moon first.
Yep.
And I love all the moments of where the film actually tackled that idea head on, to where it was talking about the sacrifices that everyone made, not only monetarily, but life, and how the film portrayed all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed, you know, the news, the government, civilians, the people themselves, all dealing with it. And there was one moment where some government official was all, you know, when is enough? You know, have we not already sacrificed enough? And then Neil Armstrong turns around and is like, it's too fucking late
for you to ask that question in the first place.
Yeah.
That question would have probably been appropriate when the first person died.
Yeah. And yeah.
Well, also going to that, when is enough, it reminds me of the scene where there were protesters.
Oh yeah.
They were talking about their own day-to-day problems that they were basically putting it into a chant and saying, I have these problems, but we still have enough tax dollars to send these people to the moon.
Whitey on the moon.
Yes. And they kept saying it and saying more problems and more problems. So it kind of goes back to how in the end of the film, you don't see him put
that the protesters.
Yeah, the protesters were expressing themselves very angrily and putting themselves in a position where they themselves couldn't find a solution to their own problems, but demanding the solution to come from the government.
Yeah.
Or which I don't know why, because it never comes from the government.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting how at the end of this film, it doesn't show Neil Armstrong putting the American flag on the moon.
Yeah.
And throughout this whole film, I always felt that it wasn't about him as an American getting to the moon, but him as an individual getting through whatever he was going through done.
Yeah.
And finalized. So the journey was way more important than... Also, which is how he expressed his phrase, was, me as a person, I'm getting something out of this, but humanity as a whole is also getting something out of it. So finally, it doesn't show him putting the flag, specifically the American flag.
Yeah, and that was such a big controversy for the film, and I feel like that's probably one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people skipped this movie. It was I remember when it came out, a lot of the like far right Republicans and other groups of people who are very patriotic were saying that this film was disgusting and it was ignoring the American achievement. Yeah. And I feel like the film shows, firstly, it's in his perspective, so why would you show something that probably meant very little to him?
Yes.
He is very centered on himself, and I feel it's actually a really brilliant example of, you know, patriotism, or you doing something for a group can only take you so far. When that group breaks down, when that nation breaks down, your motivation is dead.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting all your willpower and strength onto something you cannot control.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as sadly as anyone wants to say it, no single person truly controls the United States. It's such a giant entity that is controlled by millions of things, and
Which is mostly emotion.
yeah, and it's volatile. You don't even know true motivations or reasonings. There's so
Until
much
decades later.
Yeah, so many choices are hidden and shrouded between bullshit.
Fine print.
Look at most of the wars that millions have died over, and if you were to actually break it all down in a bullet point list of all the events and all the choices made by all these people, you would just fucking laugh. It's so pathetic.
Mm.
Most of everything that has happened was fucking bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine, so you already have that, but imagine being Neil Armstrong, being NASA, being funded by the US government, but then at the same time, there was probably polls at this time where most people were saying the NASA mission was a worthless
Mm-hmm.
waste of money.
Mm-hmm.
All the congressmen in the film say that. Why are we spending money for this? What is this doing? It's not helping people's Medicare. It's not helping people food stamps, like all this other shit that doesn't really, it only matters as much as whatever your political perspective is.
Mm-hmm.
But you as a person working for an organization trying to accomplish something so impossible, and then your own nation and the own people in that nation, most of them hate you. Most of the people funding you are telling you one more fuck up and you're done. It feels like you're working for a group of people, or not NASA, but the people funding NASA. It feels like at any wrong step, I could step on a flower the wrong way, and we're done. Everything we've done is done. Everyone that's died up to this point, worthless. All the sacrifice, all the time, all the blood, sweat, and tears, worthless. All because of a thing that is so non-existent in a real way.
Mm-hmm.
The country.
Mm.
And the amount of importance that you would have, the amount for you to do such an impossible task, you doing it for America isn't strong enough, and I just recently read a book about Leaders Eat Last, and they talk about you can't have people do something for the company, because once something happens with the company, it's over. All your employees, they lose faith. It's over. You have to have them truly believe and love themselves. They must love working for themselves to where that love transpires into the company. And this man, he was so motivated, not because he was doing it for America, not even because he was doing it for mankind, but he was doing it for himself. And that is the true greatest motivator that any human can have, is doing something purely for yourself in such a strong-willed way that nothing else can get in your way.
But for yourself, but for a greater purpose. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it for yourself for a greater purpose, but it has to be true
to who you are as a person.
Yeah, you can't just fake and be like, well, I'm going to help the world too afterwards. It has to be extremely honest to your core.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, that whole...
Well, can I add to that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So imagine you're going through all those obstacles, and at the end, when everything is set, the people who were bashing on you, not even in a constructive way, but just as a menacing way, they come around and they take all the credit.
Yeah.
So I imagine how the word appropriation is used nowadays. So it's kind of like what I think the word appropriation means, which is someone coming in and taking the best of what you've done, and not really going through the struggles like you did, and just, like I said, taking the best and flaunting the best around, like, we did it, it's us, whatever,
Yeah. I mean, I would never even... I mean, I'm like super unnationalistic or whatever, but it was a NASA achievement. Like, it wasn't... I don't even think it was yes, it was Americans working there, but them being Americans didn't really define them in my eyes. Them being astronauts defined them. Them having the dream, the aspirations, the motivations, the willpower, the emotional strength to do what their mission was as a unit. They were NASA astronauts first and foremost.
Well, I don't know, but because I personally am nationalistic, but I do see your point, but I don't agree with it because they were funding, even though their reason was pride and they didn't want the Russians to beat them, which is that laughable reason for why they're doing something so big, but they're also themselves feeling that pressure of, oh, all these people are yelling at us, the government, first off, for giving these people money, so it's also on us. The struggle might also be on us because we're taking a lot of these big blows just to give you the money and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, well, technically, they did play a big part, which is the initial funding.
Oh, no, yeah, it is. No one can say it's not an American achievement, but...
Well, that's what you just said.
No, I was just saying, in my perspective, first and foremost, it's a NASA achievement, and they were working for the American government.
Yeah.
So, yes, I'm not saying neither of them are right. I'm just saying to say one is right and say the others aren't right is wrong. You know, like, saying it's...
Ooh, I get it. It's like you have equipment in front of you, and there's a person who is the inventor.
Yes.
And my name is Einstein.
Yes.
Me as an inventor, I work under a company who just pays me a salary, right? But the invention and the actual product only has my name because I'm the one who mentally went through the process of making it and creating it and having it work for everyone. So it's an Einstein invention. It's not a whatever
American
LLC invention. I see it.
Yeah, it's because, all right, so this is where the confusion's happening. Everyone was saying this political outburst. They didn't they're minimizing the American achievement, quote unquote. They're saying it's only they're attacking it as you didn't show the American flag being planted, which was the most important aspect of this mission. This was for America. But but you're ignoring the men and women of NASA
who lost their lives.
Yeah. It was a NASA achievement. You're ignoring the fact that, guess what? They're humans that did this. So it's a humankind. Yeah. It's, Americans aren't as, Americans, Britons, Japanese, Koreans, they're all humans. Yes. So anything that a Japanese person does that affects the entire human race, guess what? It's a humankind achievement.
Yes.
And then, I just hate the idea that it's one or the other. And that's why the politicalness was being brought up, because if it wasn't just about the American achievement, the whole film was about a man doing something.
Yeah.
So, it's not minimizing that.
I know this probably might not seem like at all what you're trying to explain, but I just imagine my little brother, he has something, right? And he's playing a game. And my other brother goes up to him. He's like, "Hey, what are you playing?" And my little brother's like, "Don't copy me. Don't copy me." Yeah. It's like, no, bro. Like, to me, it's you're literally inspiring him to do something similar, but he's more likely than not gonna make it into his own thing. So it's a group, whatever. It probably didn't make sense, but it's like when it's like someone saying, "Don't copy me," even though I've already achieved this, and I want to keep it for myself. Yeah, it's a selfish reasoning. There is nothing positive coming out of you, like keeping it to yourself. Yeah, I'm sharing this. Yeah,
especially when it's so fucking big. It's a moon that every single human being can see at the night.
Mm-hmm. But you're the only one who has ever been on it.
Yeah.
Well, you and the other guy.
Yeah. It's just the whole outrage of it not being a quote unquote super American patriotic film
Mm-hmm.
is just stupid to me when the character himself wasn't that. And the achievement itself is grander than that.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you just seem like a fucking closed-minded dumbass
Mm-hmm.
to think that it's only one thing when it's so many things that we don't even understand at all yet.
Mm-hmm. Because the effects of it rippled throughout 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah, until we won't know the next step of it until there's a human on Mars. And
well, you kind of know the steps on of it because of Elon Musk.
yeah.
He sees how it was possible back then when technology wasn't as advanced. So now he's not copying, but he's being inspired by the first idea.
Yes.
And he's working towards moving forward to make an even greater goal, which is landing on Mars happen.
Yes. And that's the next step for man.
And you look at me like that?
I don't know. All right. Anyways,
like this girl.
But I love the whole protein scene because the first time I was like, oh, this is kind of weird, and then the second time it really clicked why that protest was there, and it made me feel just anger because it was a bunch of victimized people. This protest specifically, victimized by the government and by whatever, and by themselves. And I just hate how they were just automatically segregating themselves and segregating NASA, which, I mean, there's probably statistics and facts saying that NASA was predominantly white during this time period. And I'm not trying to like give them a free pass or whatever, but just the fact that everyone is automatically attacking them. Well, these protesters were just attacking them, and then they were specifically saying "Whitey on the moon," and then I don't know. It's kind of disgusting, just people attacking other people when they don't even have all the information, like
and then boiling them down to their skin color.
Yeah, and
they're not really noticing how much they had to go through just to be where they are at that second.
Exactly. And I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but there's that other movie with the African American women who worked at NASA during the moon.
I want to see that too.
Yeah, and then I mean, there's so much information there that I feel like I don't even know all of the information, and just automatically casting blame is just such a violent, worthless.
It's an immature way to take things.
It breeds more victimization. You know, recently in Birmingham, we've had an event that happened at a mall, and everyone was so quick to say, "Oh, we've solved it," and then it turns out it's not that. And then it's so quick to attack, and there's just, it just reflects how fickle victimized people are because they want answers before they truly have all the information.
They're the group of people who say, "I'm sorry" last, and willing to say, "I messed up." Yeah,
and it's such a vicious cycle of negativity that only breeds more. Well, before we go into scores, there's just one last thing I wanted to talk about.
The music was awesome.
Yeah, I want to talk about the score by Justin Hurwitz. What a fantastic composer. He composed La La Land, and that was seeing him compose that music to this, it is such a stark difference, but at the same time, unlike Damien Chazelle, where a lot of his visual motives don't carry through, the music does carry through. I feel if you listen to La La Land music and then you listen to First Man score, there's an echo effect. It seems like the same artist, but playing with a whole new tool set, and it's so amazing, all the electronic sounds that he creates, but it almost sounds very minimalist. He has this piano element that is constant throughout the film, and the themes all. I don't remember the specific sounds and stuff anymore because it's been a couple days removed, but I just remember how beautiful. So many of the sounds were the second time, and I will definitely be listening to this soundtrack to write to because it's that good. And then I just love how it sounds like something new when it's a space movie. You know, most space movies have very generic scores, and it's really hard to do something that hasn't already been done with such a specific genre.
Oh,
And
yes.
him using this classical sound, but also mixing these instruments. I don't even know what instruments he uses, but I know he uses a lot of very strange instruments
Mm-hmm.
to create the sound waves and the effects that he does. And then the other thing I want to talk about.
Didn't you tell me he ran it through one of those electric synthesizer? Is that what it's called? So it's actual real notes, but you're running it through a computer program.
I think he did that for some stuff. I don't know exactly for sure, but I know there's this one instrument that's like a metal bar, and then you put your hand and goes,
and it just makes a noise while you're touching it.
Yeah, it's something like that. I saw it in a video. I don't know the name of it, but whatevs. But also the other thing I want to talk about, the true last thing I want to talk about, was the sound design and sound editing. All the sound effects in the film were just fucking perfect. You know, when they're going into space, the sound of rattling, the sound of shaking, the sound of things beeping and booping, the sound of things breaking, snapping, burning, crashing, the booms, you know, when they would escape sound barriers, go like an explosion was happening, and just the sound design of the film just perfectly was a perfect exclamation mark to all the visuals. When you were meant to feel anxiety, the sound design was right there behind it, turning it up to 12. And it was brilliant. I'm really glad it got a couple Oscar nominations for, I think, sound design or sound mixing, but both of those things were just brilliant in the film. One of the best sound design films of the year was A Quiet Place, you know.
Oh, yes.
Just the way they use sound to gather emotions was brilliant in this film.
Yes.
But yeah, do you have anything else you want to...
I just want to say freedom of speech is a beautiful thing, where we can have
an open discussion.
No, where we can have people actually say what they mean, even though we don't agree with them and we think they're thinking in a very victimized way. We still get to hear those points, and I just want to say it's a very 10 out of 10 thing that I really like how that exists in this country.
Yeah, that's true. And I feel like the solution is never shut up, it's listen. I think that's like one of the most important things that everyone can do. Like, I think protests are very important because so much has changed. Even in American history, look at all the waves of movements that have happened. They were through protests, but there is always very key people, or the group as a whole. They need to truly understand what's happening and truly understand they need to listen, not only to themselves, but to everything. Well, what would you give this movie out of 10?
2 out of 10.
2?
It made me cry too many times.
What the hell?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
What the heck?
I'm just kidding.
What would you give it out of 10?
Can you go first?
Oh, alright, so I've already talked about everything in great detail. I think if I missed something, fuck it. What?
I give it a 8 out of 10.
Whoa, you jumped up to 8?
What was it before?
6?
It's a 8 out of 10.
Oh,
The second discussion opened my eyes, opened my heart, and now it's 8 out of 10. And my eyes are watering for some reason. I guess I'm gonna cry again.
Honey, don't cry.
Yeah.
So what is an 8 out of 10 for you? That's like a great movie, an amazing movie?
It's moving. It moves me either with inspiration or emotionally or physically, you know?
Yeah.
It makes you want to change something about who you are as a person. A 10 out of 10 is a paradigm shift of a movie that opens your eyes to a whole new way of thinking.
Yeah. I think I originally gave this film a 9.5 out of 10, but
Mhm.
now that I have my handy dandy rating system,
Wait, you're gonna bump it down?
yeah, I'm gonna give it a 9.4.
What? What is the point?
Cause it's so my
What?
9.5 to 9.9 is a phenomenal movie.
Mhm. Mhm.
But if someone were to off the bat to ask me how was the film, it was amazing. So that's a
Mm.
9.4 to 9. So it's on the cusp of being phenomenal in my mind, which phenomenal is like. So yeah, phenomenal film is. It was literally missing one thing to be a 10 out of 10.
What was it missing?
Well, this is not even phenomenal. It's amazing. So it's
Okay.
missing a couple things. But for me, just the home video stuff was such a distraction for me
Oh yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
it just made me distracted. There was the other scene that I didn't talk about there's another scene that I don't know why, it just really, I didn't like it because every other part of the film was so specific on how it was filmed, and the the rocket going into the last rocket going to the moon, that whole series of scenes and shots, I don't know, they were just so boring to me.
Mhm.
Boring because I knew how far these creators were willing to go to make something truly unique and to show you something you haven't seen in
Mhm.
a way you haven't seen it. And
Mhm.
then the rocket to the moon shooting off was just one of the most generic scenes.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't be a problem in any other film, but in a film where everything is so precise, and then you see this one whole segment that's just it does.
Yeah.
I don't know if they just copped out or if they, I don't know, lacked creativity, or maybe they did think this was their original way of doing it. But
Mhm.
for me as a personal or as a viewer, especially the second time, that whole series, it didn't do anything for me. I wasn't engaged in the story. I wasn't learning anything more about his perspective. I wasn't feeling anything. It was just, okay, we're watching the rocket leave Earth and it's in space and we're getting closer and we're at the moon. Besides
Yes.
the last shot where you see the moon really far away and you see the spaceship kind of getting to it, that was a beautiful shot. I feel like they could have just cut to that, or just thought of a different way to shoot it to where you are adding some sort of, there's more there, there's more depth. It just felt like a very,
More substance.
yeah, it just, out of all the scenes in the movie, I would honestly cut that whole segment because it did nothing.
Mm.
So those two reasons are why I'm dropping it down to a 9.4, but it's still an amazing film,
Yeah.
must see film. I would recommend everyone to watch it. It's just such an interesting and original film about a man's story.
Mm-hmm. A man who couldn't take the loss of his child.
Yeah. And one thing we talked about in the last one that I didn't really talk about, but I'll just say really fast, was I just love seeing a film about a person who is so focused and so motivated on his own intent on doing something. And for me, as a person who is really, well, most people, you yourself and probably most people listening to this, they have some goal in their life that they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and most people would consider that their dream objective or dream job, or, oh, I wish I could write a book, or I wish I could be a ballerina, or whatever it is. For me, it's more of an artistic thing, which I feel is way more fickle and dangerous than anything that is can logically be done. But to see someone like Neil Armstrong in a film do something so fucking impossible, it makes me feel as if me struggling to write my 5,000 words a day as such a small, minute thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really inspiring seeing someone work at such a high level with so much stress, with so much danger, with so many things complicating his way, with so many doors closing in his face, with so many obstacles and the unknown and space, millions of miles.
Yes.
You could blink wrong and probably die, you know? And me wanting to write, or someone else wanting to do whatever their dream or whatever they're really passionate about, the
Mm-hmm.
task that they should be doing at hand, and most of us fail at doing,
Or put it off.
or put it off, and seeing someone who, when they are at their weakest moment, is when they are the strongest.
Yeah.
And I think if you are someone like me or you trying to achieve something greater than yourself, seeing this movie can be very motivational if you obviously I feel like he took it a step too far, but there is aspects of his personality that you can learn from. The biggest one being maybe when you're down or maybe when you were suffering or
Don't just shut down.
yeah, don't shut down, do the next thing. Maybe working on something can be a relief other than just sobbing and crying. There's many people deal with stress different ways. I'm not telling people to change the way they deal with stuff, but maybe try new ways to cope.
I was saying, I think try what you're saying, because when you are going from task to task, you are getting a sense of completion.
Yeah, of
So
achievement.
even if it's just making your bed in the morning, you get a sense of accomplishment and of finality.
Yes.
So it might be like that. So
Yeah.
you might be working on something that you've always been putting off, and maybe something bad happens to you, but because you are working on it and you get to the end, you will feel that finality for sure.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't turn out the way you thought it was going to be, but at the end, like I keep saying, you will feel some closure.
Yeah. So for all the people out there wanting to do something great in their life,
like me.
Shit, I forgot what I was gonna say.
9.5 out of 10.
9.4.
And then I was gonna say 8.10. Wait. 8 out of 10.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for listening. I forgot the quote I was gonna say, but you know what it... Oh, that I was gonna say, for everyone out there who is trying to do something that they feel is impossible or insane, or they feel they're too weak, or they don't have the strength to do it, remember that human beings have made it to the moon.
Oh, yes.
And that one person had enough strength to arrive there. Well, 3 people arrived there. And like put yourself in a perspective of whatever you think is the greatest humankind achievement or the greatest achievement for whatever you're doing. Think about that person and then remove everything that you feel is in your way and just fucking do it because that person did it.
And I know we've been talking about Neil Armstrong, but there is that his partner too. He made it there too.
Yeah, Buzz Aldrin.
So people might not remember you for what you collectively did with someone else, and they might get more recognition, but
well, that guy's I think he was way more popular than Neil Armstrong.
That's who, the other guy?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the point is that just keep doing you.
Okay, did you think he was an asshole?
Who?
Buzz Aldrin.
Who's Buzz Aldrin?
The other guy who was like, well, he died because he fucked up whatever. If it was me, I wouldn't have died. And then
That's his partner?
Yeah, that was the one that was there on the moon with him.
No, it wasn't.
Yes.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, that was Buzz Aldrin.
Oh.
He was the bald one who at the other time they were looking at the rocket and like
Neil had to tell him, don't say what everyone's thinking because you're making it worse. Yeah. Or you pretend to know what everyone's thinking, but that's not at all. I think he was kind of disrespectful in a way that he wasn't emotionally mature to realize that his words weren't helping at all. Yeah. They were just making everyone feel depressed
and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it made him seem like he was bigger than everyone else. I don't know. Anyways.
But out of everything, he just felt like he was disrespectful.
Yeah.
And a little inconsiderate because of it.
Yeah.
But that was it. He's probably like hella smart too. Well, he is.
Yeah.
Or if he has not died. I don't know. I'm not sure, but damn it.
Yeah.
I don't know my history.
Yeah.
But he made it to the moon, boys.
Well, thanks for listening. Hope you check out our other episodes. We're going to be doing The Favorite soon, and we're going to be watching Velvet Buzzsaw, so stay tuned. Go back and watch our other spoiler talks and reviews and stuff. And
yes,
feel free to email us at cineverm@yahoo.com.